Hello and welcome to Signals, Gunslinger Retrospective, the quarterly release from the Gunslinger portion of the Flytrap Digital Patreon. My name's Michael, and with me tonight we have the two other heads of the Gunslinger Lunatic Asylum. We have, first of all, the big boss, Anton.
Hi guys, I'm Anton. I'm based in New Zealand. Between me and my wife Kim, we run Flytrap Digital, and we are very happy to be here with Michael from the Charge Blog and Dan from Desk Ops in Germany for our first retrospective. So thank you for joining us.
Speaking of which, Dan, I think some people who know the ultramoderns may recognize you from somewhere else.
Yeah, obviously only from my very soothing voice. But yeah, hi guys, I'm Dan. I'm more or less the print-on-demand guy for the Gunslinger stuff, and will also be since the last release, the guy who do the supports for them. So if you have complaints, go straight to me, but you probably won't. But yeah, I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very excited to be part of this project.
Cool. So I should also mention, if you don't know where else I'm from, if you're any what involved with Ultramoderns, I'm the guy behind Charge Blog, responsible for getting far too many people into this hobby. It's quite concerning, actually. So the idea behind Signals is to effectively be a retrospective of the last 3 months of releases, for which anyone who signed up to the Gunslinger Patreon, or the Gunslinger element of the Flytrap Digital Patreon, will have got their hands on. We're going to use this as a chance to kind of talk through what we've released, go over things which we countered, fun little challenges. If you've read any of the deep dives I've done on Charge Blog, which effectively is a bit more of an interesting way to get hold of them, and requires far less reading, far less struggling through my blog's theme. So we get to have a bit of a sit down. Also, you get to hear the interesting behind the scenes stuff directly from the people involved. So we should have a little chat about that. So I think probably the first thing we should go over is what is Gunslinger? We've kind of talked a little bit about, like, obviously the mechanical side, but Gunslinger, what's kind of the goal of it? I think that a lot of us have our own ideas of what this might be, but I think Anton, as the one who kicked it all off, should start off with kind of the first ideas and what made him kind of lean towards making ultramodern figures and kicking that off.
Yeah, sure thing, Mike. Well, Gunslinger was basically conceived the end of 2022, sort of October, November. Flytrap Digital, as a result of COVID and all the lockdowns, became a thing during the lockdown, basically when our supply chains were shut down. Because we're based in New Zealand, we have experienced some real difficulties with all manners of supply and demand. We've had trouble going from, or prior, I should go back a step. We've been in this game for about 20 years now. We started off traditionally and have sculpted traditionally solidly for 20 years. We also have an extensive white metal operation and a resin casting operation as well. And both me and myself and my wife and a few local friends have been actively creating and supplying white metal and resin miniatures to the wargaming industry for that period of time. Now, with COVID and the big holdups in the supply chain, our ability to access white metal and resin became a real drama. That, coupled with the increased rates, tariffs, customs duties, all that sort of stuff, effectively started to, it shut us down. Luckily, we'd sort of seen the writing on the wall a year earlier, and although I'd been on the fence about jumping into the digital realm, this one really sealed the deal for me. And it was basically, okay, go digital and teach yourself this aspect of the industry, even though I was reluctant to do so to begin with, or go bust and find yourself another job. So I started frantically getting into digital, purchased ZBrush and just worked like a dog, teaching myself the program over probably about 6 months. At which point, when the hammer really fell on our traditional aspect of the business, I was in a position to be able to offer digital products. Now, we started off by offering the core Flytrap products, which has nothing to do with moderns or historicals for that matter, even though that's traditionally what we've done for other companies for all this time. Warpod, Netherworld's Edge, and Caveman vs. Wild, our own little IPs that we've been running, were the first facets of our digital expansion. But it was always an intention to delve into historics and by proxy ultra moderns from that point as well. Now, I've done commission work for a number of companies over the years, and it's been extensive. So I was also keenly aware of the demand for traditional figures over digital. But it was in that transition that I realized all this time that I'd spent working for other companies, I was building empires for others while my own was crumbling. Decided it was time to take the leap, and that's when Gunslinger came about, basically out of a love for fantasy novels and games. I'm a big Ghost Recon fan. Been a big Armor fan for years, and all forms of media. Been actively involved in the film industry as well, so I've had the privilege of exposure to a lot of things. But it basically culminated in this, and I started off with Gunslinger, and and that really came to fruition as a result of a meeting I had with Michael in York earlier this year. So
let's talk about that. I had received a out of the blue Facebook message saying, "Hey, I'm going to be in the UK for a couple of months. Do you want to come meet up and have a drink?" This is coming just after I'd sort of take a look at some of Anton's figures and was like, these are really nice sculpts, but they're not quite the style I like anymore, because after getting a 3D printer, I definitely found myself really wanting to transition across to the crispness you get from 3D sculpted and well printed 3D figures. So my first thought was Anton was luring me to a hotel outside York to dispose of me and drop me in the river. After I calmed down a bit and went across, we had a really interesting conversation. I think it was kind of very much it's one of those cases where I've been covering the ultra modern period of wargaming since 2014, quite not intensely, but it comes and goes in terms of interest. But I've basically been keeping an eye on what companies are doing what. So when I came across, we had a little conversation. I think a part of it was just to sort of get a rough idea of what was going on, what people were looking for, what pitfalls to avoid. And then he said the magic words: if you want to get involved, you can get involved as much as you want. And the monkey paw curled a little bit, and I was like, "Oh, interesting." So I kind of came on board initially just as sort of an advisor, like, "Hey, this is the area to charge for. This is what's missing from the range." And then as time went on, it kind of went into more of like maybe I could come on board to do some basic pack design, come up with concepts we can use going forward, and help to start building up the Gunslinger universe effectively. So that was kind of my involvement. But as we started moving forward, obviously, there's only so much time we can all put into it. Anton's got to sculpt both Gunslinger, but also has to sculpt Flight Trap stuff. I have a full-time day job that doesn't let me, unfortunately, sit there talking about these figures or looking at Anton's sculpts all the time. And also, I think, Anton, both you and I are very keen to get these figures in as many people's hands as possible. So that's where Dan popped up. Because for one thing, Dan, as someone who runs your own print-on-demand shop, you know a few things about supporting some models and getting them ready in a state for people to actually easily print them on a variety of machines, right?
Yeah, kind of got pushed into it. Let's say something of it. I mean, if you're running your own print-on-demand, then you need to have the best products in terms of supporting, so that I have the easiest way and the best finished product for the clients or the customers who are ordering them. And I don't know, Michael kind of told me I'm the guy who gets shit done. At least that's like how he told me.
I think it was a little bit of like looking for a print-on-demand partner. There was very much kind of, we want someone we can kind of work with and get to the idea. I think we did also kind of bribe you though, like sort of
Yes,
little trail of
absolutely.
candy to to a box sort of thing.
Absolutely. But like I'm really excited about like when I heard that Michael is doing with Anton this Gunslinger theme. I'm also a big fan of all the Tom Clancy's media from books, movies, and games. I was totally on board. I'm also a regular backer of the Patreon, so I'm not getting any free stuff here in that regard. And I really believe in this cause and the idea behind Gunslinger in bringing a product out which is very unique and very in the vision of both of Michael and Anton, obviously. And maybe a little sprinkle from me sometimes.
I mean,
So,
there has been quite a lot of please make this part bigger. It needs to be able to print.
Yeah.
It looks wonderful, but please just slightly expand.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the advantages of bringing on a third set of eyes that is really focused on the printing side, of course, is that we get to effectively have someone to be able to look at the models and go, this is great, but can we just tweak this to make it more printable? Which is, it's a skill I have. Anton, I mean, you must be getting bored and sick and tired of seeing the models by the time you're frantically getting ready to distribute to everyone. And anyone who's been on the Patreon, you might have seen, the first 3 months we've seen some little tweaks we had to do, some late night files suddenly being patched as we were like, this guy's got the wrong plate carrier on. It's like, oh. Such,
yeah.
So
Thanks for that one, Mike.
Oh well, I mean, to be fair, we've all done worse. But yeah, I mean, it's a case of that we've having a third set of eyes. Some of us technical can spot stuff that just occasionally slips by. As we're learning creating processes, then we get that third set.
Absolutely, Mike. I mean, I've been supporting my own figures since day one, and I've always done a satisfactory job. I do have a tendency to go to the side of overcaution and tend to get a little bit heavy-handed on the supports. But taking on Dan after seeing the quality of his end product, it's like there was a no-brainer. Your supports are second to none as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
And the proof's in the pudding. Those images just beautiful, and it has also the added benefit of if you're supporting figures for us, then I've got more time to spend sculpting figures. So, and that's a big win in an industry that is demanding more and more on a monthly basis, sometimes for less and less. But there's constantly a drive, and there's that old adage that artists are always in the race to the bottom. Your input and you coming on board has really freed me up a lot to be able to push ahead and explore other projects. I mean, what we've got in the works. Gunslinger is just one aspect of it. We've got other historical lines already well in development, and we've got a lot of future plans. And those plans just would not see the light of day unless I had someone that I could just hand on heart, breathe, and rely on.
No pressure for me. Okay, thanks. No, but I really appreciate it. I really appreciate.
But also, you give the opportunity to put physical product into our people's hands. So something I don't have the ability in New Zealand to do. I mean, people will be paying 3 times what the product's worth just to get it shipped. So, and then that'll end up damaged going halfway across the world. It's just nice to have that operation nice and central there in Germany.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, I'm very lucky in this regard to be in Germany. Also, like what we talked earlier, that the shipping prices out of Germany are more than fair, depending obviously on the size of the package. So I feel that this will be very good cover to get a good reach and satisfies people who are very interested and don't have the time or place to print themselves because they don't have a printer.
Yeah, I mean, supporting model files is a whole discipline unto itself. I mean, you can pump some serious hours into learning to support models, and I'm far from great at it. So
you're just being nice to yourself. That's it. It's fine. The model. It's a case of it's a specialized task. I could support the model files, but it's not something that I I'm particularly skilled in, or what do you want to spend my time in? My time's better spent doing something else. It's just that allocation of, what are we good at? Let's push it across, which is something kind of the key thing about having more people come on board for this group. Obviously, it frees up people to do what they really want to do, or what really looking forward to. So yeah,
absolutely. I mean, your contribution to the narrative, Michael's, it's just like Dan's contribution with the print on demand. These projects, I mean, these skill sets are combining to form the complete package, without either of which it wouldn't work. It'd fall apart, or we wouldn't get the quality of the end result. The depth of the end result is what we can united. So
I try my best. Occasionally it works.
I mean, the greatest thing is we are all excited about the Gunslinger project, so that's the main motivator here.
Yeah, definitely.
And we are our best own customers. So
I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're all trying to get figures that we want to print and either play with or paint up or have on display somewhere. And I think that kind of that sensibility, the fact that we are here and want to do this, definitely opens up a world of like gives a chance to actually focus on what we want to actually do with the figures we're making. So I definitely think that's
for sure.
Speaking of the figures we're making, let's quickly scroll through and let's have a quick chat about Black Sector. So we got a question. And if you want to ask us questions that will come up in this, you can ask them on the Flytrip Digital Patreon. You have to be a member at the Gunslinger tier or higher, I think, to be able to see the signals post, to be able to do it. So obviously, next time we make one of these videos, you can add your question in. So we got a question about how did we arrive on the gear, weapons, and elements to include in the overall theme for Black Sector? At which point I have to go, I didn't actually have very much to do with it, because a lot of this stuff, a lot of the key concepts, I think, safe to say, were being made way before I even came on board the project. So Anton, do you want to kick off a quick discussion about who Black Sector is in terms and why you decided to go with this particular gear set? I'm sure anyone who knows Ultramoderns can spot some familiar things. But I think there's a few little tweaks, and we decided to go with, or you decided to kind of add to begin with, to make them stand out from just another team. So,
yeah, for sure. Well, starting off Gunslinger, I played it safe. I went for some pretty recognizable and common aspects of ultramodern warfare and compiled them into something that was more recognizable, identifiable, but still a little bit different from the norm. I mean, we're in an industry now where we have so many people, so many companies, large and small, cross-pollinating into each other. So, for example, I chose the Tom Clancy aspect initially because I wanted to give people something a little bit different, something that not everyone else is doing. I mean, you can only have so many tier 1 DevGru teams running around, or Alpha Mob boys from Russia running around before you've reached saturation point. So in order to come into the ultramodern industry at this late stage, I need to offer something different with a real solid point of difference. By taking it out of the current sphere and into the near future, i.e. the 2030 concept that we have running, we're operating in the near future. And Mike always says we're operating always 15 minutes ahead of ourselves. So I love the ability that gave us to be inherently creative with what we're doing without stepping on other people's toes. We're giving something that's clearly different to the norm. But in saying that, I started with something that was very safe. I needed a foundation for Gunslinger in which to leapfrog off and promote all the other concepts that we've got coming up. So I started with your basic boys as a launch pad. Black Sector, basically a private military contracting company, well-funded, carry all the latest gear. You have your HKs, the MPs, but there's also the slight contrast with slightly older nods, the strobes, and some of the other gears seen on more dated rigs. It was a blend, but it was a safe blend, and it gave me the foundation that we needed to step forward. And that's basically what it was. Black Sector just needed a bunch of good-looking guys to kick it off with some very recognizable gear.
I think my favorite comment was someone referred to the fast helmet AR-15 jump carrier as the Space Marines of the ultramodern genre, which I honestly I think that is kind of a good way to think about it. Like you're always going to need figures with that gear layout, and there's been enough little tweaks to them that they do. There's little things which are different and stand out. You say, I think the most recognizable thing, as you mentioned, is the IR block. It's an older style. They're still being used. You still see them around. So being able to sort of start off from that point and move forward was really cool. So also looking at Black Sector, you can sort of see a few little tweaks to sort of some of the features which I kind of think of as, well, we sat down and think about what Gunslinger models should do. You can see on these models we have the peg on the foot, and we have the little bits of variety on each of the individual figures. So the peg on the foot, though, was very much someone commented on Discord, hey, maybe these poses look a bit unstable. At which point, I don't think it was even a conversation. It was just, let's put a peg in the foot. I came back and they were all done. It's like, yeah.
Peg in the foot.
And I think that, as we've definitely seen from printing, a lot of people have found it very easy. I think we went with the peg because effectively it gave us the best of both worlds. You could stick it directly into a base, or you could shave it down and just give you a slightly larger area. I think a few people have actually done both of those options, so it's quite interesting to see how it works.
Well, the funny thing is, I've seen them on Games Workshop figures for years. So I was like, I hadn't seen them on any ultra-modern digital figures, so we just borrow that idea from Games Workshop. And it works.
Don't tell them.
Thanks, Games Workshop.
So
the great thing with the packs is also with people playing on acrylic bases, they don't have a puddle or something. So it's something I think is notable.
Even if we don't agree with them, it's still an easy win to give them the ability to get the figures on the bases and looking good without having to cut away a bunch of material. So we're really pleased to see just how people have picked up on them, which is nice.
I mean, sorry, Mike. With the nature of Black Sector, to start off that range, I identified a few key factors I wanted incorporated. I wanted this team to be on the go. This team had just been dropped off by a helo or whatever, and these guys were moving into action. So all the poses are very dynamic. I've heard a few comments say, "Oh, but they're all carrying this. Effectively, this is the same guy all carrying the same gear." Yep, they are. They are the same guy carrying different versions of the same gear and slightly different armament, so slightly different loadouts. But every single one of the actual anatomic poses is different. And we've really strived to capture motion. These guys are moving into contact. They may not necessarily be in contact at this point, but they're moving with a purpose. And by following that dynamicism throughout the range, they just look great when the figures are stacked up, or on the tabletop, there is a real motion captured in the figures. And that, for me, was more important than saying, oh, well, this guy needs this version of this AR or this type of rig. No, they all carry the same gear. That's how this well-funded PMC operates. But this initial Black Sector faction was designed, first and foremost, to be one portraying a very dynamic role on the tabletop.
Yeah, I mean, we'll cover it later on, but actually that whole goal of being like, this is the assault team, this is the group going in up close and personal, definitely affected how we thought about some of the other weapons we ended up giving them, especially once in month 2, I read my head and went, oh, goody, time for me to pick things. And I kind of went off and was like, okay. And then we actually had the point of like, we want everything we add to these guys to just kind of focus on a very particular range. We're not currently building anything generic, but we might do in the future. But we'll talk about that later on when we get onto Project UBK, but not for a couple of months. The other thing you mentioned about like having the variety in the figures is the weapons. I know it's funny that a lot of people will really get really excited about what the weapons are on. I think that's because they're kind of the main focus point of all these characters. So we had a moment, I think, earlier on where a lot of the guys had pretty much the same weapons, all 416s, all with the same setup, EOTech, magnifier, that whole selection. And then I think it was like one day you just went, I'm going to give them more varied weapons. And just went in. And I came back. It was just like, these guys now have different combinations of gear. So some of them have got magnifiers, some of them have just got the red dot by themselves. Some of them have got like the aim point style ones. And also different positions of things like the laser units on the rails, which is definitely something it's little tweaks. I'm sure someone could look at me like, well, technically you wouldn't do that particular setup, but I think in terms of selling the whole visual of the range of these guys, they're a uniform team, but they all have their own setups. It definitely helps sort of tie the fiction together for these guys.
That's right. There's been no matter how minute, there's been adjustments across every single figure. None of the AR setups are the same. Even down to the rigs where all the different components are rearranged. It's just small things. And for most people, gaming at 30 mil or whatever scale they're gaming at really wouldn't notice it or really care about it. But from the design aspect, we're like, no, this is going to be the way we do our ranges. We're going to go that extra mile and make sure that for those people who really want to get down to the nitty gritty can and will be satisfied by the end result.
Cool.
I mean, Dan, how have you found them with the printouts? Can you notice them printing them out at 30 mil? Have you noticed the subtle changes?
Absolutely. And one thing I wanted just to point out is that the shirts are different as well. We have a few guys in the first which have pockets, which is a combat shirt thing, I guess, and the other one which have like no pockets on the arms. So they're like big difference. And I think personally, like when this team got released, I wasn't even part, or probably not even in the minds of of you guys to be part of this team. But I was really excited about the individualism of the guns because we kind of, for game purpose, define a miniature by its gun because it's the component which makes a difference in the game. So, and seeing like all those different optics is something which I personally also really appreciate because I like to give them like, this one is the green optic and the other one has a black one, and really good. Yeah. So this extra mile for me was already worth it. So I really appreciate it. Yeah. And I think
that's cool.
So
and printing wise, if you're maybe you're not a guy who likes playing with 28 or 30 millimeter in this case, you're more the diorama guy, then you will really appreciate them more because if you print them in a bigger scale, then really everything pops up, which Michael have some pictures for later.
We'll get to that later on. Let's look at it. So the second part of the first release was Black Side of Breach Team, which we came in. And the first question that'll be last was why did Breach Team have DMRs? At which point we kind of went, it's a fun place to have them, so quiet. So Breach Team, we went with the MP7 and shotguns, and this is where we start to have the arguments about SMGs and modern combat and shotguns and all that fun stuff. But I think for this first team, portraying them as this specific team with their styles, very kind of Navy SEAL inspired. I think we definitely felt it was cool to have the MP7s and give players the options. I think one thing that I feel is that in future ranges, we're not going to focus on having like filling in the blanks of like every team must have 2 SMGs and 2 shotguns, whatever. It's going to be very much a case of what fits the storyline we're trying to tell. So
absolutely. Narrative is key.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because I'm writing it, so of course I think narrative is key. So there's something interesting to point with the marksman in this set is that we've actually got one NVG tube up, which is something that we haven't really seen a huge amount, but it is a functionality. I think that's one thing that it's one thing that I spotted quite early on and was like, yeah, we should do this, especially with the magnified optics, because these guys with the DMRs don't have it's not a massive range magnified optic. It's more of an LVPO looking thing, and you don't want to shoot those for an NVG tube. So the idea to have the capability we had to have those variant heads for the DMR gunners, I think was one easy jumping off point when we first got into the range.
Yeah.
And then everyone wanted modular heads, and we had to have a conversation. So
Guilty.
yeah, so when we first released the Black Saga heads, I think we were very much like head swapping is going to be for the more advanced
The
customers.
modelers.
Yeah,
Yeah, the guys who get mixed up with the needetite. They break out the green stuff and the jeweler's saw.
Yeah, except the first thing that happened was as soon as we put up like separate heads with them, first question was how do we put the heads on the bodies? And
Yeah,
we had to sort of think about it. So as a sculpt,
not everyone's Ivan Nylander, mate.
Ivan the Terrible, you chopping off the heads, as has been mentioned.
Yeah, I blame him.
Yeah, I think it was one of those situations where I think we had a lot of people turn up and go, no, actually, we really want this is a good piece of functionality. As a sculptor, how did the process affect going forward with these modular heads?
It was a pain in the ass. I'm not gonna lie, because I mean, when I done the initial run of figures, every figure had been posed right up to the head neck pose to just work in the current narrative of the figure. To come up with a solution which I didn't think was going to be such a problem initially, but then it was quickly realized that we could achieve a lot through offering the modularity of heads. I mean, all it took was a slight update in the nods or the strobe or the battery pack or whatever, and all of a sudden you've taken the initial concept of Gunslinger and you've created like tip of the spear tier 1 units if you had offered the heads with the different variations. Coming up with the ball and socket joint was a bit of a no-brainer. I see a lot of that going through with other larger companies. It's used in the toy figure industry. So it was just a matter of finding a ball that worked, that could print and do the job without looking ridiculous on the figure, and then just making the depressions in the figures, cutting the heads off, making the depressions, and releasing them separate. It is done purely for the community, for the modularity of it. I still prefer to have everything fixed, but I can also see the sense in not having to release 20 packs of the same figures with slightly different heads for the sake of completion. And let's face it, not everyone likes to or has the ability to model to the degree that would do it justice. And some people just want an easy fix. Some people just want to be able to print out figures to a bit of modulation, bit of conversion work, and get them on the table. So why not offer it to them?
Speaking of crazed conversion and modularity, Dan, you do a lot of figures with modular elements to them. We've got good friends over at Combat Octopus, which you sell through your store. So after deciding that you wanted us to also have modular heads, how's that going to affect the providing them as print on demand? Because obviously you've suddenly gone from releasing X number of products a month to X number plus variations.
Yeah.
Basically, how deep have you dug your own grave when it comes to selling these figures?
Well, with like you mentioned, Common Octopus, I dug the grave really deep, which I wrote a little bit back with my shop restart because it was just too much work for what I will like, what the client will get, and also people don't want to have the modularity. It's like a really niche group that do like appreciate this. But in terms of Gunslinger, with providing the print on demand, people will be able to choose their heads for the specific release. I mean, I will offer them as the complete group. There will be, as for now, no individual figures be pickable. If you write me an email, everything's possible. But the other idea is to like provide just a bunch of heads with the release, and people can just try it out, because it's a different thing seeing it on a picture, on a render, than having it actually in your hands and then like popping the head on and then taking like, oh, actually this looks much better than what I had imagined. So, and in terms of labor, heads are really, doable in time and everything. So I will go that extra mile to provide the customers with this little. I mean, to also give justice to Anton doing this extra effort, I mean, we have to give them heads out. So I cannot hide them and just say they're for me, they're for me. But yeah, to come back around with the I was one of the first guys who also said like, oh, I really would like to have modular heads with the classic ball and socket. And the great thing is that you can have one pose, and if you just change the direction of the head looking left or right, you can have the same miniature with a completely different feel. So like for me, which is a big no-go to have duplicates on the table, this is like a godsend. Yeah, so I can have a full company of Black Sector and just swap off the heads without it feeling repetitive or copied. So thanks for that, Anton.
So, you're welcome, Dan.
So we kicked off the second month with a bit of I think to say month 2 of this progress was a bit spicy, I think would be the term for it, because we both had to get the heads redone, bodies redone, all of it resupported, and then work on release 2. So release 2 was effectively what we'd done the first month. We've got lots of variety of kit. Now let's actually focus on adding a few little extra elements and sort of pushing for what we can do. First pack, everything that goes boom, which I think we all very much like getting the heavy firepower and picking the support. And again, when most of you hours coming up with the ideas, I effectively just turned around and gave some rough poses, some bits of equipment. You know, we got 2 guys with M320s, 2 guys with machine guns, 2 guys with carrying light AT, and effectively I put my pose ideas down. And I always remember like the moment when Anton was like, "I've got some pose ideas." I was like, you know what? I'm gonna let the guy who's trained in sculpting go off and come up with the poses, and yeah, I think you definitely came up with some pretty nice ideas for like how you want to do, especially these guys. So do you want to quickly go into like your posing idea?
Yeah. One thing that's very obvious as a sculptor is seeing a range and seeing shortcuts that other sculptors have taken. You see a lot of people effectively using the same leg pose or the same torso pose or the same general pose across many different figures. That for me is a pet peeve, because I'm my biggest critic when it comes to sculpting. So first things first, everything had to be different. No reflecting, no mirroring, no same. At the basic level of anatomy, posing, everything has to be different. I wanted to carry through the dynamicism that we had already established in the first month's release. These guys are the heavy hitters of the group, but it doesn't mean that they can't be moving into contact just like the rest of the boys. This was not a troops in contact release. Gunslinger, the Black Sector guys are not a troops in contact. They are troops moving into contact release. So I think we captured it pretty good. Mike gave me some initial ideas for posing. I'd already had a mind for how I wanted the figures to flow through. So I did my best to incorporate those initial notes. But I mean, Mike, all the list out for the loadouts and the rigging, it was all perfect. And you pulled me up on a few bugaboos on this particular range where I hadn't swapped out certain bits of gear to match the loadout.
I mean, but there was also smaller stuff which we looked at and went like, well, that needs a little bit of a tweak, just sort of reduce some bits where some arm poses looked like, no, it wasn't arm poses, more like equipment wasn't quite meshing as maybe we actually wanted it to. So
or it had been overdone in some areas and needed to be cut back. But I think overall, Mike, between the to and froing over, what was it, 3 days, trying to get this one nailed down.
Oh, that was a big rush to get some.
I think we came up with a range that both works, even as the heavy weapons team of the group. They look just like the other guys as far as dynamics go. They're still part of that same cohesive unit, doing what they should be doing, as well as carrying the heavy loads. And I think we nailed it. I think they look great.
One thing I really... Sorry, go on.
No, you go for it. You go for it, Dan.
What I appreciate, again, let's say from the consumer side, is that we have from each weapon type one, the dynamic pose, the running one, and the other one, which is more like about ready to take a shot or something. This is something I really like. Like what you said earlier with the posing, how the team looks on the table. Or if we will go back to a diorama, this is really great.
Yeah.
I like them a lot.
That's an interesting point you raised there, Dan. From the start, wanted the figures for dioramic purposes just as much as for gaming. I mean, if you're going through the effort of making figures to start with, why not have them tick as many boxes as possible? Not just for gaming purposes, but for dioramas, just for the pure joy of painting. And another offshoot, which should have caught me by surprise, is the number of people that are upscaling these figures to sort of 1/35th.
We'll get to them. We have the images.
We'll and the fact that they work. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way these guys came out. Again, it gave us another opportunity to offer another set of heads to add to that quota. So our head library is developed. All these little subtle differences.
Those heads are coming in soon. I think there's some real nice sort of diversions, effectively, with ones we added with season. With month 2. One thing I wanted to mention was a lot of these. With the first release, we had a lot of guys with independent. All the rifles were different. With month 2, we kind of rationalized that like some of these guys were definitely going to be more kind of second line. So as part of your assault force, but maybe doing specialist tasks. So there's a few kind of there effectively is a standardized black sector loadout for some of these rifles, which we've used in a few places, which I think is a
pretty cool. They just got onto the arsenal and grabbed something off the wall and
which of course, because to go with the heavy support, we also had the command team, and this was really the like, let's go all out, let's see what we can do, let's really push forward kind of some of these poses and some of the little arrangements. So we had the dog, which
the dog was the fur missile was absolutely essential.
I must admit, so when I first saw the dog, I was like, that fur's way too much. That looks like it's just looks like a sheep. I think they're a tactical sheep. And then of course, I went and actually looked across at what you've done with some of your other ranges, which was like the Caveman versus Wild range.
Caveman versus Wild and Netherworld's Edge.
Where obviously you kind of exaggerated the fur effect to then mean when it prints, it actually comes out looking realistic and still having the detail. Yeah, exactly. So that was definitely a learning experience on my end to see this is the way to do this.
Especially because it's going to be quite a small piece when scaled at 30mm. That dog's a small piece. You really need. I mean, I know it doesn't look so attractive in the render, but it will pay out. It will show up in the physical print. So you do have to accentuate some of the details, just like you do with the figures as well. Hence why you do get some accentuation in areas where it probably shouldn't. Or
there's the tiniest dog is currently being shown on the screen.
Oh yeah. So I mean, Dan, looking at it, are you happy with that model?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's lost it now.
No, it's amazing. One thing I really like with the dog is that you didn't went with a traditional what's called in English shepherd's dog, or
the Alsatian.
So you it's an Alaskan Malamute or something, right?
No, I went with a Belgian Malinois, sort of esque. There's definitely some little tweaks sort of make it stand out a bit more. We also went with the doggles because the dog had to look slightly different, sort of ready for all sorts.
The doggles, love that.
And then of course with the actual guys in the team, we went with these.
Let's talk about the guys.
The figures you actually use to shoot people rather than the dog, which disappears off. So
fights people.
So I think that a lot of people definitely like the cool SMG guy with the sledgehammer to sort of lead your breacher team. Because the two on the outside, effectively, we sort of saw them as kind of the specialists for the first 2 packs. Which you could
we needed a specialist breacher and a specialist assaulter. So
the idea was kind of effectively we could have them. You could either run them as just part of a team, or you could have them as their own little kind of step above the rest of the team.
Yeah.
So we've got stuff like the breach has got his breaching on his back, and he's got a different pose, and then the assaulter's got his rucksack on. So medic, EOD, whatever you need to use him for, and also he's got his fighting knife out and ready in his hand,
Yeah.
sort of good to go. Which was definitely that was definitely a pose which I wasn't expecting, and then I saw it and I was like, no, I like this on board. Let's do this. So it's very interesting to work kind of UK to New Zealand, because obviously the time zones don't work. Well, they do, because what happens is
the opposite. When Mike's going to bed, I'm waking up.
So it can be like, right, I've done my day's work. Here's a bunch of information for you. And I go to bed, and I'll wake up and it's like, oh, I've got 2 figures for you. And I go, I'm sorry, what? I'm still in bed. It does mean I think I'm going to put a little rule in that, like, we don't look at previews on phones, because it's very hard to actually spot all the cool little details. And I'm just in bed like, okay, yeah, that's cool figure. So it was definitely a really good few days of just like, I'm going to go to bed, I'm going to wake up, there's going to be something excellent waiting for me. So I had it's a bit like Christmas come early. Is the mad release or mad prep week. So
it's a cool process. I enjoy it. I enjoy it thoroughly. I enjoy working in the team studio environment as opposed to going solo. It's the back and forth, the banter that comes about. It's good times. But those little details, like the tactical knife, these are just little things that sort of float in the back of my mind, and when I see the opportunity to put it in, I'll put it in, and I just hope that Mike picks up on it, and Dan will have a look and go, "Oh, cool."
Dan Satter going, "How's this going to print?"
But I'm particularly happy with the breacher, with the sledgehammer. I wanted of every sort of 5 or 6 man range, is one figure I really want to stand out. Now, this is a pack of standout dudes, guys and girls, but I always have one figure that I want to sort of push the boundaries and give that sort of pose, and I feel like I nailed it with the breacher in this one. I love the tactical knife on the assaulter. I love the drone operator with the
little fold down tactical display.
This little display.
I thought he was watching naughty videos.
He's watching Dan's OnlyFans.
Oh, someone's going to paint Pornhub on that screen.
Absolutely.
They probably have already. The dog's obviously cool. The team leader's, he does his thing. He's got his arm raised and he's doing team leader stuff. But this is also the first real introduction to the first character for the Gunslinger universe, Catherine Jensen. And this was a character that Mike threw at me one day, and I was like, okay, how to tackle this one? But I think we got it.
Yeah, I think we definitely wanted to make Jensen stand out from the rest of the team. But not in a way that made her like when you have your action movie and you've got the goons in the background of like, as they're going off to rescue someone at the very end, and like they all have a uniform look, and then the heroes are like, it's the uniform look with something slightly different. We really wanted to make it that you could paint her up as just one of the group, but if you spend time on the details, you get the extra little add-ons. But it's definitely, I think we definitely got quite inspired by seeing some more recent game releases as well, in terms of some of the general ideas of like, no, this is actually like, let's see what the game industry is doing in terms of how they're gearing up their characters. And a lot of them are like, there's quite a lot of extra gear, but I think for this one we found a nice balance between going too much for a painter and not enough. She's also got a quite cool little pack with extra bits of gear on, and she also got a bunch of head options, which I think we've kind of gone back and forth on the idea of having the characters have different heads. And I think that in this case, it kind of made sense for her too, because it means that you can run her alongside all the variants of Black Sector, because you only have your daytime Black Sector boys. She doesn't need to have the goggles down. If you want to run nighttime, though, she gets to have the fancy goggles. Although you do also have a male version of that head, so you can have all the options. I'm really happy with how she came out. Like there was a real that is the physical version of the character that I had in my head. She is a no nonsense, turned up to make sure that these Black Sector boys actually do their job. And that pose it just nails it. So and she might turn up again. You never know. We might see more of Catherine Jensen, maybe a different version at some point. maybe.
Quite likely. It was also a good chance. I shouldn't move forward without mentioning Nick, my good friend Nick, who does a lot of the weapons for me. It was the chance to use his SIGs, the first of the series of SIGs that we had mastered up. I think he did a particularly good job of this line, and
I think
so thanks, Nick.
Actually, the SIGs. So going from a weapon. So obviously you're not weapons isn't a particularly like an area you enjoy sculpting, and you much prefer the posing and all of the detailing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to do the hard edge stuff a lot more. I do prefer the anatomy and the posing, and that I've got a friend who also, well, Nick O'Brien, who does weapons for us.
But you've been building up this stockpile of weapons for quite a while, because if anyone's been following the Flytrap Digital Facebook, they will have seen these SIGs. Because several years ago, there was very much I wonder what Flytrap's up to if they're doing all this. You know, they're getting all these 3D models. Like maybe they're going to do their own range. And this would have been 2020 sometime.
Earlier than
like
that,
definitely
probably. Yeah,
kind of way back. Because I think even you and I, Dan, were discussing it at the time. Like, what's this picture mean? What does it mean?
Yeah, we've been stockpiling weapons now and assets for probably about 4 years at this point. So we've got quite an extensive library. It's just a matter of remembering which ones we've had mastered and which ones to be pulling out, which is more of a headache than anything. But
we should clarify for the CIA listening that we do mean weapons as in tiny models, not actual. You're not stockpiling actual weapons out there in New Zealand.
No. we have no revolution planned at all.
We aren't? I thought we were doing a miniature revolution.
We've just now made the FBI
very
watch
on brand. both the FBI watch list and the Woody Turner phrase. So I think with Jensen, we've got to have all these cool little bits of extra equipment. We've got the cool heads. The head options gives you some more variety. So if you want to do more interesting, more exciting things, maybe. And also I think we kind of lean towards like, now we've got these optional heads, like how far can we push it in terms of letting you swap out the pack you've got, which we kind of pushed even further with month 3's releases, because we had the security team. So let's talk about
polarizing little release.
Yeah, let's talk about the non-polarizing bit. So head options. We had Brainwork, 5 separate heads, which is kind of our target every month now. The Hydra system, as we called it.
It's cool. I like it. Hydra, 5-headed dragon.
Yeah, also because it kind of helps to separate. Like these heads are they work with the Ranger release, but they are designed to be used elsewhere. So, for example, when we do more ranges in the future, if you want to start dropping Black Sector heads on them, I'm not going to stop you. I'm looking forward to seeing the cool things people come up with.
Absolutely, it just helps tie it all together.
So we had these heads, which we gave goggles. We've got glasses. We've got versions with the balaclava pulled down and helmet still on. We've got versions with the balaclava on. We've got a sort of a team leadery head with just the headset and their helmet. And I think everyone was really excited about the heads. And then we have the security team itself. Now, I really like them. And I'm not just saying that because my boss is on the call.
I love them.
Yeah, I think this is something that when we sat down to talk about Gunslinger back in New York, we definitely came up with the concept like a lot of these missions are going to be covert. Like people love playing. Maybe it's because we play a lot of Splinter Cell. That might be the reason behind it. We like having guards that maybe are a bit more exciting and dramatic than just simply a non-combat pose. So we then released them, and there was definitely a bit of a back and forth about what people were expecting.
Well, can I just start by actually disclosing my angle for these?
Yeah.
Modern Warfare game. Well, Modern Warfare as a game. Just wargaming in general these days. People are constrained by space. Accessibility to other players or a local gaming store, all that sort of stuff. So a lot of people are playing at home. A lot of people are playing solo. Solitaire gaming has become a real thing. It has been for a long time, but as far as I'm aware, it's become a real thing in the last sort of 4 or 5 years. One of my little things, that's my OCD kicking in, is solo wargaming with, in a scenario like you've just mentioned, the covert actions. I couldn't ever sort of get on board with the look of character models acting as sentries in combat poses. You know, guys are they're all running around with their arms raised. They're in action, although they're just security goons on night shift patrol, or you know, standing vigilant, standing guard over something. So that was the sort of angle I took with these guys. I wanted these guys to look like they're doing what they're meant to be doing. These are your late shifters, your night shifters. No real urgency. They're on guard duty. They've pulled duty for the night. They're just doing what soldiers do when they're not in action. And it tends to be a little on the boring side, but I've tried to capture that sort of concept through this particular range. I wanted dudes who are doing what they do before they're in action on my gaming top. So I've designed these basically. I wouldn't say it's a selfish thing to do, but it's how I'd like to see goons, security dudes, being represented on my gaming top prior to going into action. And that's what these guys were created for. Plus, it also gave me the ability to flex a bit of sculpting muscle and try something a bit different. And I think it's quite an innovative range. People are either going to love them or they're going to hate them. People will either find use for them or they won't. But one of the big drivers for this was Martin's the Solo Wargamers solo wargames. I just think it's cool to have guys realistically portrayed doing what they're meant to be doing prior to going into contact. So, and that's it. That's the only reason I've created the security team. It's a theme, it's a concept that I like to push right throughout all following ranges. So whether they get a full 5-man set or not, might be less, might be more. I don't know. It depends on the narrative that we're pushing.
Yeah, I think one thing with it is that you know, we could have done a security team that was everyone in like kind of on guard poses and kind of but still very much like this is someone just standing with a rifle.
This is extreme.
Yeah,
this is guys. I mean, this is next to guys sitting around a campfire playing cards, or
I mean, I think that, you know, there is definitely a part of us which always wants to make really nice looking figures, and I think that these guys will definitely help sell. In my opinion, they help to sell the story of the game you're playing. And me personally, as a wargamer, like my big focus is always like, how can we sell the story of the map we're playing? You know, this is the type of guy, like, you know, as Dan knows from when we've played in the past, my big thing is writing up a big briefing beforehand. So if that ties into having you guys sat around guard positions, then it adds to it. As you say, we're always looking to change and adjust. So, you know, it might be that maybe in the next one, when the range are suitable for it, we'll do a few more, not quite as laid back. Maybe in some ones we'll do more laid back. It's just a case of pushing the story forward.
You look at it this way. These guys were designed as the counter aspect to the next part of this release. Before we go into that, how hard is it to swap these guys out for any of the previous Black Sector releases once they're in contact? You know, Dan's got his silhouette markers that I see featured on the Solo Wargamers pages, and they're lovely. The little red silhouette markers of possible troops in action, or you know, possible hotspots, possible, you know, tangos. I think of this release here as the next step up from that. You actually get, you know, you've got sentries. You don't know really what they are until they're revealed, or that's sort of the angle. But I needed a counterforce also to the blockade team that we released for here. I needed guys who are sitting around courtwares while they have this elite detachment of reconnaissance specialists moving in for the kill. And this was all based around the narrative that Mike came up with in the Black Sea.
Frankly thrown together. No, that's a lie. It was definitely.
You have to understand the greater story. All of our figures follow the narrative. So
yeah. So to Dan, obviously, as someone who think we'd only just sort of arranged the deal the setup by the time these figures were announced. So obviously you're someone who also has actually plays a fair amount of solo games, or you know, sets up solo games. You've played 0-200 and things like that. How do you feel about these sort of sentry models?
I'm a big fan of Sentry models of the more relaxed, because the Splinter Cell comment you made, I
Wait
felt
a minute.
really targeted. I felt really targeted by it. Yeah. So I really like stealthy games, and I think we three and like a small section of wargamers are more we play to play out a story and not like the points.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Narrative
say
gaming over
lawyer.
power gaming.
Yeah, narrative gaming. Exactly. Thank you. And like you said, for O200, for example, I written up a little bit of a homebrew to pull it into the modern section. I already have those in my mind for this type of game. And yeah, I'm really excited. And then again, I can say again, diorama. And yeah, just screams from them. But I really like them. And since they are the really more relaxed, they're like on guard duty, but they're like, it will nothing happen. So take off my helmet, smoke a cigarette. Yeah, maybe we get in the next release someone who's eating an MRE. So yeah, would be funny. But yeah, I think it's also very unique, but in terms of sentries with so much props included. It's not just like a guy standing around, which you can only have so many types of anatomical positioned people.
Yeah.
I think
So
I think also from a if it be hard business reason, doing an STL release actually means that we can. I mean, I feel we can push some poses which are maybe a little bit more hit or miss, but because we want to do them, we can push them because when people are buying them, they're not paying quite as much as they would be for a physical metal model, and also for us, we're not worrying about trying to keep a whole bunch of unpopular poses in stock. Like we're not gonna we like if we were selling these as metal casts, like the security team, I might be on the lesser end of like people like excited for it. The people who are really excited for it will definitely go and buy it. But we have the room to experiment and try. So I'm definitely happy with what we came out with for.
Another thing too, because of the sheer number of figures that we release every month, we're not just releasing 6 figures for the princely sum of the Patreon. We're releasing 10 to 12, and then a whole bunch of head variants and stuff. I feel that should buy us a little bit of leeway to explore other more exciting options and avenues that aren't regularly seen. In saying that, I wonder how long before we start seeing other companies adopt a sort of approach like this, a more narrative approach, stepping up. Not all troops need to be in contact.
Yeah.
I mean 99.9% of the time they're not in contact. And in the case of like reconnaissance troops and things like that, if they're in contact, they're not doing their job. So
are you maybe possibly thinking about a little something that's on its way that we have?
Oh, maybe a little something.
Maybe we'll come back.
A little something sweaty and jungly.
But enough about. I'm not going to make that joke. Let's go on to talk about the thing that I think I could really say, like, with this part of this release, I think we were both really excited about this month because we both got to go like completely all out in terms of designing stuff, and I am so happy with how our first character team turned out. Like, these guys are awesome. So for anyone interested, which I mean, if you're watching this much, you should probably be interested. So Blockade is our second officially announced faction. They are, while Black Sector is a very uniform, it's a direct action unit. It's designed to kick indoors and take people on. Blockade is a bit more of a sneaky kind of soft power, reaching out from. Well, we can go into what the world state is at some point, but let's just say that Russia's not looking as good as maybe it does in the past. We're definitely tying in some of that near future Tom Clancy drama with what stage we've reached with them. So Blockade is effectively a bit of soft power. They can nip into places by utilizing the shipping lanes and their contract as maritime security. So with that as a starting point, because but basically the reason Blockade started was one day Anton dropped me a line out of nowhere saying, "I've got an idea, Russian faction Blockade," and I was like, "Ooh, okay." So what can I work from that? And we had it with this maritime idea, and then from there on, it was like, this is a really different situation from Black Sector, so we can take full advantage of it. And
that's the beauty of Gunslinger's narrative on a whole. It's a world of shadowy conspiracies and skullduggery,
secret groups, and all sorts of kind of shenanigans. I think shenanigans is the official term for what's going on.
The potential is limitless. The potential is limitless, and they're operating today. So we're not too far removed from, the current time frame.
What we are removed from is what we decided to go with arming these guys, because we had a conversation about this Rangers gear. To begin with, so we had the idea of covert team doing some like covert reconnaissance. They're just coming off the water. Anyone who has played a certain Call of Duty game might recognize the initial inspiration for these guys. But we decided to effectively look at that gear and then bring it forward into modern day and shift it to this faction's equipment. And we started off by going, let's give them all AS Vals, or I did. And then I sent across you the document, and it was a bit of like, oh yeah, we could do this. And we looked forward. And then like a week later, I got a message from Anton. It was just like, I don't think he works for them. And it was very much a case of like, once you sit down and think about it, no, it doesn't. The Val is a special weapon. It's of a certain era, and these guys are supposed to be the tip of the spear. So we got to have that moment of like opening up the arms book of 2030 and be like, okay, so what can we give these guys instead? And we were very lucky to find that there is a modernized version of the Val, which is the AMB 17. This is had that name on my brain forever. I totally forgot it. So we decided to go with that, which is a very unique looking weapon. It's one of Kalashnikov's Concern's newer items. And it kind of screams like near future. It's the advantage we get from pushing into the 2030s. And we got to give it to all the guys in the team. And then I gave you effectively a reference doc, which was like, these are the guns. This is some rough ideas for heads. These are some rough layouts of like what the team members doing. And then once again, I got to have Christmas week where I just woke up every morning to find a cool new model arriving.
It's good times.
So I think you said like you got to really go all out on these ones, partially because
I had a ton of fun with these ones. Well, that's where I've drummed poor Mike's ears over this one. Buria 156, the blockade team, is a character team. And I know we had released Catherine Jensen with the series of 5 heads. I kind of took a stance on this. If we're doing characters, we keep the heads fixed, attached. I'll offer the heads as separate variants later on for people to use in whatever configuration they want. But for the actual specific character set, I want them to follow the narrative that they've been designed around. And that means the heads stay attached, because the head's very much an integral part of the pose, which is telling the story. And that's just how I sculpt, narrative sculptor, I guess. But anyway, this team, Maritime Commandos, elite former Russian military forces, have various backgrounds as you read through Mike's excellent dossiers on these guys. But I'm working on a project behind the scenes that only a few people know about, and it's got a very specific purpose. They're on a very specific mission, and everything is absolutely tailored to that mission. And it will flow exceedingly throughout the entire range of figures. And I wanted to capture that also for this. This is a sneaky reconnaissance unit that's just emerged from the waters of the Black Sea, probably on some dirty derelict wharf somewhere, approaching some industrial area or a series of hangars or warehouses. They are stalking, they're scanning, they're in reconnaissance mode, so they're not in contact, but they're ready to kick some ass when shit goes down. Hence the posing, everything's low, crouched, deliberate. They are stalking, and that's the narrative around blockade. So we've really tried to push the boundaries on the posing that we've captured here, how it sort of integrates with the weapons, with the right down to the facial expressions. And I think we did it again. I mean, I especially love the female character, who I'll let Michael talk about. But yeah, on a whole, this is a team that would work in Dan's idea of a diorama again. It just works on all scales, all levels, and multiple aspects, not just tabletop wargaming. I think, but that's just me, and I'm pretty close to the project, so.
And they tie in very nice with the security release if you put them next to each other. Like what I have in mind is a little diorama where Valentina, the female character, is sneaking around with the knife, and then there's one of the guys on the barrel or on the pallet. So just this image, just perfect, yeah, for narrative things.
And if anyone hasn't seen Dan's prints of these, they are the loveliest prints I think I've ever seen, period. And the way they just peel off those sprues, just incredible. So for the print-on-demanders, you want to be checking out Dan's releases for there and getting them firsthand.
There was very definitely a moment of looking at what Dan had produced me, like, yep, we made a good choice. Because there's that moment of like, I know he's good at it, but like let's just make sure. I mean, I was like, no, I'm not going to worry. It's great. It's fantastic. Let's do this. Let's really focus on getting these guys out. So it was definitely a moment of like, yep, top.
And just for the record, this is the first team that Dan's actually done the supports for our Patreon and the My Mini Factory when they go to that. He's also gone back and redone all the previous supports for the first 3 months. So everything has been supported by Dan's expert hand. And these are the files that you will be getting. And he also check out the Flytrap Factory social media to see just how lovely these peel off. It's like butter being spread on hot toast. It's just amazing.
And that was just a voiceover. but yeah, I mean, it's definitely good to see like just how they both get out there and get ready. And I'm definitely like excited to see what happens when we get the print on demand up and running with everyone, which is October 4th. So which hopefully should be coming soon when this video comes out and not several months later.
Oh, it was last week, by the way. Yeah. So to quick connect on the support thing, like I mean, we are all going here our extra mile for this project, and I feel that those miniatures it's justified to put in the extra work to make the supports, the depth and the size of the contact tip very specific for each different part. So I'm not just like hitting auto support and then dragging stuff around. Because as people know who print themselves their own miniatures, is when you remove them, you sometimes have this pit or like this scar from the support. And with those, they're like next to none. Also, like the positioning where the supports will be where you will not see the miniature when you base it. Yeah. And because I just have it in my hand, this is one of the guys in 135. Yeah, the lighting is not the best, but we have some pictures down the line. But yeah, I want to play in 135 actually, but I'm not gonna open that can of worms with terrain. And
all that terrain to get up, yeah. So So I mean that's the releases for the first 3 months. I think that not to toot our own horn, which, I mean, to be fair, a lot of this video is tooting his own horn, but we're like, from what we've made, we've definitely kind of shown off the concept. We've looked into character individuals, but also character teams. We've done effectively a narratively focused group, which narrative maybe wasn't there from the moment we kind of kicked off the first release, but I think we bring it all together in the end, basically made it feel like a consistent set.
So I mean, it's been a 3 months of trial and error too.
Yeah,
it's been a test for the dynamics of our creative team, how we work, how we keep the communication open, the dialect running, the documents are all being compiled lovely, the running supply of and critique, constructive criticism on the models, everything's just working very congruently. It's been I mean, to go from the start of the 3 months to now, our processes have just streamlined. They've gone ahead leaps and bounds just in that short space of time. So it's very much our preliminary range of figures in every aspect of the word. It fills me full of excitement for what's to come. Everything's going to be that much more streamlined and efficient and effective. And it's just, I've got big, we've all got big plans for where this line's going in the future.
Yeah, I think we're all definitely ready for what comes next. But before we talk about that, we do actually have some questions, which admittedly we've managed to actually tell us all of these questions before we really sort of dug into it.
Yeah.
But I forgot about this. I put this in specifically. I totally forgot. A little sneak peek. Well, behind the scenes look. There was a moment where we actually looked at potentially outfitting them with a PP19 instead, which was very much a let's have a play around and see what works. And I think that it could have worked with them. I'm still very glad we went that extra step and we got the A and B. I think that although this guy looks cool, I think having the newer kit looks even better. So we do.
The PP will stick around for the next guys.
Yeah,
the next faction.
We do have a PP19 in the works, like on the books. So maybe it'll reappear at some point if we're lucky. So let's quickly go on to what the community's been up to before we get to questions. So first of all, we got some nicely painted
Bing.
models. So Bing, Bing is someone who you know quite well and has been.
Bing Lim is a very integral part of the Flytrap digital operation. He's one of our patrons. He came on very early in the piece with the original Flytrap IP stuff. So Warpod, Caveman vs. Wild, and Netherworld's Edge. And he just took it upon himself to print and paint our stuff. I mean, he does an absolutely amazing job. He works tirelessly, and he'll give anything a chance. He's not even into ultra moderns, but he took it, printed it out, and came up with that, which sort of blew my mind. Yeah, Bing Lim, if you're listening, and I'm sure you are, thank you, mate. We owe you a ton. He has been with us since the start of Patreon, and I hope to keep him with us till the end, whenever that may come. But he's based in Canada. Bing Lim, he's on Instagram. If you get a chance, have a look. Bing Art.
Definitely all sorts of really nice looking stuff.
And he's a great illustrator as well.
So this was definitely the stuff that, like, even as when we've been trying to get it all together, kind of been seeing it painted up, it's like, really happy with the end result, seeing it all painted up. And it wasn't just Bing who got to painting. We also had fewer people, but as part of earlier on we mentioned about scaling up the figures. So all of these were done, I think, at 135th, or so it's like slightly scaled up. Someone took it a bit further. This is Paul.
A little bit.
Paul did, I think that's 1/6 scale, something ridiculous.
That's incredible.
250%, he said. I'm not sure
he did send me it. I had a slight issue with printing this. I was like, what scale were you printing at? And it's like, well, let's not talk about that.
1-to-1.
So you see, he had a real good job. I think he was very happy when he printed it, like how many of the details stayed on, how much you could see.
That's a beautiful paint job.
He's pretty good at this painting thing. Even he is, he's very modest, so he'll keep it quiet. But it's really, really nice work. I'm really happy.
That's beautiful work.
We've also had some people painting them at the regular scales. These are two we've grabbed from the Ultra Modern Discord. Just some real nice little paint jobs on them. I mean, and obviously as creators, it's really nice to actually see people paint the figures up and seeing
especially them to this standard. Yeah, it's just beautiful.
So it's
I love the take that's been adopted on the right-hand one as a police unit.
Yeah. Especially with I think we didn't have plastic cuffs on our figures, did we?
No, we didn't. He's included all of them.
So it's a cool little tweak, and also it shows you what you can do with the basic figures.
Victor,
even with additional heads, you're going to be able to take them even further and do a whole variety of stuff. So, and we also have someone else's painted models. Who could this possibly be?
Those? That's fantastic.
This is our very own Dan's paint jobs. So he did the daytime job, and then the little dots of UV paint.
The Vallejo fluorescent one, which
lovely work.
Yeah, just give that little
It's definitely like a little like unique touch. I'm quite looking forward to you playing an entire game with that on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we actually do. I have 2 UV bulbs which I screw in, and then the complete table is moonlight, and it's really great when
Oh,
you have those little.
Dan, you
Yeah.
need to get a hobby, mate.
Yeah. Yeah. A hobby from a hobby. Yeah.
So,
But I enjoyed painting up really good. So I mean, you need to taste your own product before you're gonna sell it. So yeah,
Yeah,
great, fun.
lovely.
Can't wait to have a game with them.
Okay, so now we're on to questions. At which point,
questions.
look for questions and realize actually we've done most of these. So we had a question about the gear and elements to include for Black Sector, which we covered in Black Sector Talk. We had an idea of how Gunslinger started, which goes all the way back at the start, which I am looking at the runtime. We've run quite long. So we'll play around with this. Too busy talking. So the question about the setting of 2030, we kind of talked a lot about kind of individual bits of this. The basic thing I'd say is that by pushing 2030, we have a lot more leeway in what we can use. Because effectively we'll have stuff that's kind of prototype now to look at moving forward. But also a lot of the gear people are currently running will still be around. It'll just be maybe slightly different tiers of guys wearing it. There'll be slightly different setups. We'll see.
I mean, guys today are still running around with weapons from the 70s. So
from the 50s, if you look at the AKM.
Yeah. And sure, when we roll back to adding a few guys with FALs and a few guys with AKs, we're going to definitely have some older gear running around. So it's kind of very much like it gives us the ability to look forward without necessarily cutting off what's behind us in terms of
absolutely,
especially when it comes to me sitting there being like, oh, sure, what can we give these guys in particular? It's definitely opened up a fair amount.
And by not covering any real life units per se, everything is still in the realm of our own creative fantasy for what 2030 looks like. We just have unlimited scope. I don't want to be pigeonholed into covering real life units where, rivet counters might jump on the bandwagon and at a different level of difficulty, and just avoid that. I mean, there's room for that in other Gunslinger products, as people will soon see. But for Gunslinger, the 2030 concept, we're operating in a pretty much a sand pit, the sandbox.
So what we're basically saying is we get to have play with every little bit of toy we can pull out the toy box, and we excitedly pulling weird and wonderful things. So we're definitely looking forward to that. But of course, as part of that, we have our tagline. This question is: we have a tagline: 80% realistic, 20% cinematic, 100% fun. What are some of the films, TV shows that have inspired Gunslinger? Well, we've been saying the word Tom Clancy this entire video. I'd say definitely it's not necessarily Tom Clancy's books, although there is a lot of that. I think that definitely in my case, the big inspiration is kind of that era of Tom Clancy game, which was like Ghost Recon, Advanced Warfighter, Future Soldier, Rainbow Six Vegas. Kind of that era would have been sort of 2000s, before pre-2010, where the games kind of tied together a little bit. They had this setting that
late 90s even.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to the original games, definitely tying into that element of like pushing forward slightly. Like, one of the first Ghost Recons had the OICW. It didn't even get put to service, but was still a piece of kit you could play around with. So I think that it's safe to say Tom Clancy has aggressively taken all our minds in this sense.
Yeah, but even the movies. I mean, all the Jack Ryan series, Clear and Present Danger, Patriot games, all those old classics. The whole shadowy world that he's created, which is just a pseudo version of our own. It's just something very appealing about it.
Yeah,
it's borderless.
I definitely say also, it's probably a guilty pleasure for a lot of people, but Strike Back, the series with Scott and Stonebridge, like I think that's a real, like, we're maybe not quite going as far as that series did in terms of the slightly over top element, but in terms of this idea of these characterful covert operators moving around doing these tasks behind the scenes. That ties so much into Gunslinger. So I'm not going to say we'll do our own version of those two, but there might be some cool characters coming up which could sort of fulfill a similar role, and sort of really inspire that. I'd say also there's a whole lot of if you want to get a feel for it, 13 Hours by Michael Bay.
Yep.
There's definitely looking at that situation, looking at kind of the way they show off, which it maybe isn't 100% historical, but is definitely captures some of the feel we may want.
That cinematic aspect.
Yeah.
But even going back to things like Metal Gear Solid, Hideo Kojima stuff, and just and even the latest Tom Clancy games, or with the Tom Clancy title, The Division, Ghost Recon, Wildlands, and all that stuff. Absolutely complete inspiration for what we're doing, and you'll see in future releases that you'll see there's a lot of heavily inspired stuff to come.
Yeah, there is also a few other games from that Xbox 360 era that I think we've definitely looked at and gone, there's elements we can pull from this. Things like Ace Combat, where the events may be slightly over the top and it's not technically reality, but it still has that. You want to have that feel of you're doing something cool and you're playing this role in this setting. So we'll definitely. Hopefully that. I mean, most of those were games, but hopefully that just sort of answer the question of some of our inspirations. I mean, Dan, is there anything that you want to try and throw in the pot for us in terms of how you feel when you think of Gunslinger?
Yeah, I feel that you need to write more because I want to read more. No, but I have nothing to add here. It's exactly what I'm looking for. It's what we grow up with as gamers and movie watchers, and I'm really excited about it. Yeah, without tooting our own horn again. I am really. Yeah.
I think we have definitely reached the era where everyone who grew up on the games we're talking about has kind of reached that age where they want to play war games instead of necessarily playing video games as much. So kind of hopefully try and capture a few people that maybe just haven't got necessarily all the figures they want to fill that idea. So So I think, seeing as that we've been on for quite a while, we should probably think about wrapping this up. However, before we do, can't let you go without having a little sneak peek of what's coming in this next month. So,
what's coming next month?
Well, next quarter and fully, we're having, drum roll please.
Yeah,
we're not doing Blockade yet. We're going to do Coyote instead. Blockade is a faction we're very excited about. We want to do them properly. We want to take the time, and we also want to be able to kind of. They're definitely going to be a faction we'll sprinkle through various elements as we go through. They're kind of don't want to call them working behind the scenes and everything that's going wrong, but their tendrils run deep and they're doing lots of work. So instead, we're going.
Mainly, we want to keep everyone on their toes. We just want to. You want everyone to get complacent, just think, we know what's coming up this month. We know what's coming up because we'll just throw something out of the blue.
Take the
something will crawl out of the woodwork
from the side. Yeah. So what is Coyote? Well, you may recognize these guys. The idea we're going for with Coyote is they are a sort of Russian armed, slightly lower tier of quality compared to the Black Sector guys. We have a few ideas about how to make them stand out in terms of their visuals, but we're really going to try and push that grimy, grotty, rough and rugged visual identity that we want to sort of make them stand out from Black Sector and give them their own unique feel.
They're a Soviet armed unit, but they're of Eastern European origin, or a mix of some of the I wouldn't say the underbelly of the military.
They have tendrils in places where they're kind of collecting people who maybe have fallen through the cracks and giving them.
They have a dubious moral compass.
Yes, let's go with that. Most of it involves money, to put it mildly.
Or drugs.
These guys, the first release is going to be based in sort of the high deserts of the Syria, Iraq, Jordan area. So that should give you a little bit of idea of the sort of gear they're going to be using. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm very excited about possibilities we can get from this set. I think this is going to be a real let's push this range forward and see what we can do.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
really
going to open a
excited.
can of worms.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to see how the Black Sector heads will look on the Coyote release and vice versa.
Dan's first thought: how can we mix the heads? Yes.
Yeah, because they're kind of polar opposites, aren't they?
Yeah, I think one thing we definitely said was we wanted when we were doing the head designs was trying to avoid this sort of lighter. I mean, even the guys wearing helmets are going to be different from the Black Sector heads. So
yeah,
yeah. So I guess we're going to have the first previews will be sort of week or two ahead of the release on the 15th. So we can hopefully let you guys start to see what's going on with them, and then eventually get around to printing and playing with them. So these guys will take us up until December, and then we will have speaking of December, we'll have another video come December if we can find time during the mad Christmas rush to sit down and record something.
To get another retrospective done. Yeah. That's a good idea. We'll have a lot to talk about by then.
Oh god, we will do.
Yeah. I'm sure we make another 30-minute with intro.
Yeah, and the rest. So I think with that, I think that's all from us. So if I quickly just scroll back to start, we'll wrap up. So anything left to say before we finish for tonight?
From me, everyone, thank you to everyone, especially you, Mike and Dan and Bing and Kim, but also all of our patrons and the community on Discord and everything else for supporting Gunslinger the way you have to date. It's done a lot better than I expected it would. I didn't really know what to expect, to be honest. Having been a bit of a veteran in this industry, it's always a bit intimidating when you enter another sphere in a different medium, and digital's still relatively new. But yeah, it has been embraced very well, and thank you all for your continued support. It's been massive, and I look forward to just punching out a bunch more models and sticking them under your noses on a regular basis. Very exciting times for us, and we got so much to do, not just in the 2030 realm, as I've alluded to. We've got other big plans on the way as well, but it's going to come through thick and fast. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you all.
Anything from you, Dan?
Well, yeah, thanks for taking the time and watching us rebel and get excited for our projects as well. Yeah, I want to thank again Anton and Michael for not dragging me in, but like giving me this opportunity.
bribing you in.
Bribing you in, yeah. I'm really excited about the future. I mean, I have the exclusive rights, so to say, to also look behind the curtain, and I'm really excited about everything. Yeah, I'm excited for more people joining the Patreon as well. I have some stuff media-wise in mind, which we maybe talk in December about, if it gets more through. But yeah,
cool.
Yeah, cool. Yeah,
right.
No, I'm really excited. Yeah.
So
more painting, more printing.
Oh god.
Yeah, much more printing.
So to wrap up on my end, thank you very much for everyone who has joined up. As I say, I'm kind of amazed that I get the ability to design figures without having to pay someone for it. I just get to design them and then they turn up. It's amazing. But it's also the fact that that doesn't happen if we don't have the people backing and supporting this. Obviously, there's a little bit of a thrill every time someone talks about it. So I was excited to see what's going on. I also thank you for watching this. It's going to be an hour and a half long video of the three of us rambling about it. Obviously, this will be available. Don't forget to comment on it, discuss what you liked, what you didn't like, and as we try and push forward, we should hopefully improve the reproduction quality. But for now, I think it's safe to say that was the Signals, the Gunslinger retrospective for first quarter of Gunslinger releases, and I can't wait to see you all in December for episode number 2. For now, though,
thanks, guys.
Cheerio.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.